Great to have your company on Sky News across Australia. Now, there are fresh calls for Australians to ditch the popular social media application TikTok over fears the Chinese app could pose a national security threat and could be sharing users' data with China. The concerns have been put forward to a Senate inquiry on foreign interference through social media. Joining me now, former Foreign Interference Committee member, South Australian Senator Alex Antic. Alex, thanks for joining us. Look, I think there'll be a lot of 8-year-old boys, including a young Mr Gleeson, who'll be pretty unimpressed if TikTok goes, but you're saying that there are definitely links between TikTok and the way the Chinese collect data.
Well, look, yeah, thanks, Gleeson. Thanks for having me on again. Look, look, there appear to be, and it's part of the insidious nature of some of this software, is that for all intents and purposes, this appears to be a kid's toy. We've seen many of the videos which are just, innocuous really in nature. They're people singing and dancing, having a great time, and there doesn't seem to be too much to it. But of course, that's presumably what the creators were looking for, is an innocent experience, which we really don't know what the tentacles or how far the tentacles go. The software is made by a company called ByteDance, which is a company with its headquarters in Beijing. And sadly, now China's national security laws require any such companies to hand over data, software, images, whatever it may be, to the Chinese Communist Party at will. So theoretically, facial recognition type intrusions, we know that these sorts of software dig behind the scenes of your phone, so theoretically they could be going into emails, they could be going into photographs. This particular software is, so the experts say, quite insidious in terms of how it goes into your phone and accesses the various backdoors to information. It's a real problem. It's not just TikTok, of course. There are, I think, 50 apps which the Indian government have flagged, such as WeChat and other such software. But the reality of this is we really don't want to be giving access to red communist malware. That's the bottom line here. It's got to be some degree of transparency over there, and we really don't know how far and wide this information is being spread. There are concerns, and I understand now that this will be raised before the Senate Foreign Interference through Social Media Committee, which is a very, very good thing. I think this needs to be explored, and it needs to be explored further and wider than just simply TikTok.
Alex, there's a lot going on in the Chinese space at the moment. Of course, we saw the resolutions passed in Hong Kong just recently, and of course, subsequently we saw protests, many in Hong Kong, those who embrace democracy, suggesting that these particular laws, these security laws, are draconian. It must concern you, as someone who takes a really close interest in these particular matters, that this is the sort of path that the Chinese are going down. And look, they're not just picking on Australia, they're not just picking on Hong Kong. It appears as though there are fires burning around the world right now when it comes to the Chinese.
Yeah, look, you're quite right. I suppose one of the good things that has come out of this period has been, in a sense, it feels a little bit like finally the curtain has come back on some of the ambitions of the Chinese Communist Party and their expansionist ambitions. And it feels almost as if the Premier Xi has sort of used the opportunity to fast-track some of these ambitions. We saw some pro-democracy protests last year and earlier on this year as well, which presumably the ruling party does not want to repeat. I expect that what we're seeing now is the party taking a firm line in the sand with these sorts of things. It's very, very sad. Several months ago, these laws were passed unilaterally by the Politburo and their parliament, if you like, in Beijing, and came into effect about a week ago. Since that time, we've seen multiple arrests for things as trivial as holding up pro-democracy banners, and even today there are reports that libraries in Hong Kong are now removing pro-democracy books. So this is pretty concerning stuff. I think the most concerning thing about this is what it's doing to the people. And I know the Prime Minister has indicated a willingness to look at visas for people that are affected. And in one sense, putting aside the very important humanitarian grounds for that, it's maybe an opportunity for us to bring some very, very worthwhile, very good people in and their capital into this country as a way of clawing back some of the some of the money that this whole exercise has cost us. So look, we've got to see this for the positives. But I think there's a long way to go with this one. It's a very, very sad situation in what is a terrific city of Hong Kong, a city that loves freedom and liberty like no other prior to this point.
Alex, it also places a spotlight on the way in which universities in Australia are dealing with their commitments around the Chinese. The Confucius Institute, of course, rife throughout this country, rife around the world. You've now got Melbourne University facing calls to remove an advertisement for the Hong Kong police force. You've got the University of Queensland involved in a case with a student who was a pro-democracy advocate, champion, and he's been censured. I guess the question is, where does Australia's tertiary education system fit in with this particular debate?
Look, I think there has been a lot of debate about that particular issue in the last few months. We saw, as you've described, that particular incident of the University of Queensland, which has been a very concerning episode in Australia's tertiary history. Look, I think one of the issues here is that these tentacles that flow from the Chinese Communist Party, the so-called United Front, the soft power arm of the party, are still potentially being uncovered, I suppose, in terms of how far they go, how far and wide they go. The university sector has always been a concern, and we've seen the rise, as you say, of the Confucius Institutes, which I think have in the past been concerning. But also, look, we have a lot of universities doing a lot of research, a lot of advanced research. Certainly in my home state here in South Australia, we have a lot of defence industries. So I think the broader question about infiltration from the Chinese Communist Party is still a very live issue. I think it's something we need to be very, very cautious of. And I think, as I said earlier, one of the very good things which will come from this very sad period with the COVID-19 pandemic, hopefully, is that it's drawn the curtains on some of these ambitions and some of what's going on. The university sector is absolutely not immune from that.